Mike Sanderson, the Executive Director of the Maryland Association of Counties, and Ms. Laura Price, the President of the Maryland Association of Counties. And just a quick preface from me, and if others want to add in, the opportunity to participate in Maryland Association of Counties the way we have, and I've said it, multiple times, having, a colleague with Commissioner Wentz as a member of the board, and the participation that both Commissioner Frazier and Wentz have is fantastic. The open communication candidness is so important as we go through some challenging times, and it's just one of the pieces of the puzzle to understanding Maryland and the region, whether it's the BMC, the Economic Alliance of Greater Baltimore, MACo. They all dovetail with each other to understanding the impact that both legislation have and the economics and social, cultural, everything else. So really appreciate you both coming this way. One had to come a little bit further than the other, but that's okay. Maybe I'd rather be on the other side of the bridge right now, but we're here. Yeah. So this is Steve,
well, everybody knows how I feel. I said this the other day at my chamber breakfast. Back when I get into this office in 2014, we were all kind of deciding who was going to do what, and they looked at me and said, "Would you be interested in MACo?" And I'm like, "So what's MACo again?"
Can you spell it?
And I said yes. I would, after a brief description, I said, "Yeah, that sounds like something that I'd be interested in." So the rest is history. I will tell you that as almost an 8-year veteran of this office now, we could not do what we do without MACo. There is absolutely no question about that. You are MACo's the rock that keeps all of us in the state rolling along, and Laura, you know that, and we talk about that all the time. So, Michael, to you and your staff, huge thank you for all that you folks do for us, not only throughout the legislative craziness of the year, but throughout the year with everything that you provide the counties. You do an awesome job, and it's something that the memory of being involved with MACo will be forever with me, and I truly do appreciate the opportunity. So, thank you.
Well, I agree with everything that you said. I appreciate the fact that you recognize what MACo does. Again, for the record, I'm Laura Price. I'm honored to be the current president of the Maryland Association of Counties and Talbot County Council member. We are really grateful to be here this morning. A little early. I did have to get up at 5:30. I will forgive you for that. We're going to provide you with the updates from the General Assembly, and it's just been 3 weeks since good old Sine Die. It feels like forever already. The second half of session, we had things opened up. We had the opportunity to get out and shake some hands and start really communicating with those legislators in person, which makes all the difference in the world, to be able to be face to face with them, to really talk about what's important about why we like a bill, why we don't like a bill, and why it needs to be amended. And that opportunity happened, and we had our reception, near the end of session, about 3 or 4 weeks before the end of session, which was, I think, the perfect opportunity as we were trying to get through a few of these bills. There are about 2,700 of them. They love to introduce just a lot of stuff. MACo analyzed over 900 of them, which is just an enormous amount of work for the staff, and they have to go through that fast and furious, and I am eternally grateful for all of the work that they get done. I'm also eternally grateful for all the work that the Legislative Committee, and again, thank you, Steve, for everything that you do there. You are a very strong voice on that committee. We couldn't do it without you. And the committee comes together, and the last 2 years, unfortunately, it's been in, virtual in the Zoom room, and I've been trying to keep my little chickens together, going, turn on your cameras and, make sure that they stay involved, and I think they'll be glad when that part's over. That's a big commitment, whether you're traveling to Annapolis or to make sure that you're setting aside time, every Wednesday morning to do that. Our rural county coalition gets together on Monday nights and talks about all the bills that we're going to do on Wednesdays, and you're a big part of that as well. Steve, sometimes we don't have a quorum on that one, as you know. But, MACo's credibility is because of the elected officials. While the staff is really doing all the work, all the legwork, it's us that gives that final approval and gives direction to the General Assembly, and why MACo is so credible. Another reason is this man right next to me. We are so lucky to have this leader who keeps it all organized and leads this amazing organization. It is just a real honor to be able to serve with you this year, Michael, and continuing to learn how to get things done in a very nonpartisan way, something I know the Legislative Committee understands, and that we recognize how the legislation is affecting our counties and not necessarily making decisions on what our personal beliefs or politics are. And that, that's a hard thing to do. And I think it's the number one thing that I'm going to take away after my 12 years, because I'm not doing this again. And in my last year, and I really wish that the federal government and the state government could see what we do, how we communicate in those sessions on Wednesday morning. And if they would look at how MACo gets things done, then maybe the other levels of government might be able to do so as well. And you've already started the dialogue, and one of the things that I'm saying as we go around to these county tours is wanting this to be more of a dialogue, not just a presentation from us to you, making sure that, after we give you this update, that you're telling us, what we did well, what we can improve upon, and make sure that we involve all of you. I mean, we see Steve all the time, and, most of the rest of the county commissioners
I'm just asking.
come to the conferences and all.
Thing, right,
No,
Laura?
I'm just
It's a
asking.
wonderful thing. I love you. But we want to make sure that everybody's involved. So, make sure that we're having a lot of good question and answers, and obviously reaching out. That MACo is always accessible all the times of the year, and don't just rely just on your legislative committee member, but all of you. So I do want to hit on the first topic before I let, Michael take over the rest. And I know this one is very special in Steve's heart, and that is that emergency transport bill. And Steve and I both sit on the initiative subcommittee, where we start with about 50 different pieces of potential legislation, and we have to whittle that down to no more than 4 as per MACo's bylaws. It's always a hard decision, but in the 8 years I think I've been doing this on the committee, this was a tough one, and it came down to cybersecurity or EMS transport. And we knew that cybersecurity had legs of its own, that was going to have sponsors, in Annapolis anyway. And we knew that the only one who could carry the water on EMS was the counties. And, Michael was like, I don't know about this. It's going to be a tough one. It might take 2 or 3 years to get this through. It's kind of a big fiscal note on this one. But I know that Steve and I really pushed, and along with a couple of the others, this was the right place for it to be. And we won. We got this one done. So I'll tell you a little bit so for the listening public, what this does. Up until the bill passed, currently we only got reimbursed in our EMS for our ambulances $100 per trip, and only if we transported to an emergency room. We didn't get reimbursed if you treated the person on site and they didn't require transport. We didn't get reimbursed if you went to an urgent care center or to a doctor's office or some other appropriate facility. And we didn't get reimbursed one thing we added to this bill was mobile integrated health. We lovingly call them our frequent flyers, people that call 911 a lot, and we go out. But if we have some downtime, going out and visiting these folks, at home to make sure and check on them that they're okay. So that might eliminate or cut down on some of those calls, those emergency calls. And so what this accomplished was we are going to $150 for reimbursement. We would like it to get up to the $300 that we initially asked for, but this is a good start in the right direction, and it will reimburse for all of those things. It will also enable us, while this is not an insurance issue, having Medicare and Medicaid recognize that being reimbursed for these other types of transport or treating on site, it also enables us, if someone does have insurance, of course, we're always going to treat no matter what. We're going, whether or not someone's got coverage or not. But for those that do, we're able to now bill, the insurance company because it's recognized now by the state. So I just, I want to thank you all for your support, and especially Steve for testifying on this bill. It was huge to have that testimony coming from the elected officials, and so that the state legislators really understand what it is we're facing with our emergency services department. So we had a great session. We got a lot of things through like that. We killed some bills that really needed to die, and we got a lot of amendments on things that needed change, and they recognized that. So from here, I'm going to let Michael take over this song and dance that I started, and let you go on.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President and Commissioners. I'm Michael Sanderson, the Director of the Maryland Association of Counties. Flattered by your opening comments and very pleased to be with you this morning. For the teeming millions who are viewing this morning, I'll say the Maryland Association of Counties is a nonprofit that represents all the elected officials across county governments across the state, including Baltimore City and the 23 jurisdictions, so county commissioners, council members, and executives across the state. We do a lot of education and information and conferences and support for the county commissioners and county governing bodies across the state. At the moment, we're just a few weeks past the end of the General Assembly's legislative session. One of MACo's functions is to advocate and support county services before the state legislature. So that's a good deal of what we're speaking about today. We're sort of in that window of time where the state has just done its best, and counties are in the midst of preparing budgets and so forth through an annual cycle, and the time is right to sort of talk about what's happened on policy, but MACo has a footprint that's a little bit bigger than public policy. I'll speak to a couple of things. We've distributed a packet to you all. I don't plan to go through that in any detail, but all that information are excerpts from the Conduit Street blog that's on the MACo website. That's a resource both for county officials, but also for the general public who's interested in policy and county government matters. So I'll speak to just a few things and try and be respectful of your time, but it was a blur of a legislative session. Health effects still played a little bit of a role, with the legislature doing a fair amount of its work remotely rather than face-to-face for a good deal of their public hearings. They were remote sessions. That was probably a big impediment for some players in Annapolis, less so for MACo, because we have relationships with the senators and delegates already. We didn't have to introduce ourselves via email to say, can we please ask for your help on an amendment or that sort of thing. We have relationships with virtually everybody in town. We work with across the aisle and with everybody in town. This was a peculiar year in a number of ways, financially among them. I've sat at this table a number of times before you talking about, well, here's how we got through a tricky budget year in Annapolis, and we tried to fend off a budget cut or a cost shift or things of that nature, and sometimes we win, sometimes we lose on those sort of battles. This is a weird circumstance, and I know counties are in the midst of it too. In part, the federal response to this health pandemic has been to try and avert an economic catastrophe that would mirror the public health catastrophe that we have faced. And as a result, we're in a weird spot. You mentioned unemployment numbers, surprisingly low, right? Like well under 4% here in Carroll, around 4% for the state of Maryland, under 5% for the United States. That's usually the indicator of a strong and healthy economy. Public sector revenues are relatively strong right now. Whether that's a function of the federal government helping out businesses through grants and through people getting stimulus payments and deferrals of student loans and so forth, I mean, that helps people buy meals and shoes and things like that generate public revenues. I don't think we really know whether the relative surplus on the public ledger is temporary or permanent. But it left us in a circumstance this budget year where the state was not looking to slash budgets and looking to shift costs onto counties and so forth. So a little bit of a reprieve from that and some opportunities to fill in some gaps, which I think we availed ourselves of reasonably. Madam President spoke about cybersecurity. We're going to see some new resources and guidance and assistance on cybersecurity, in part because of the budget, in part because of legislation. We know the public sector is just a delicious target for people who want to do us ill, that we hold sensitive information about taxpayers and health records and things like that, and if they can seize it and hold it hostage and ask for Bitcoin, that's a great business for them to be in. So it suits us to have strong defenses and good recovery plans in the event that those sort of things happen, and sadly, they're going to continue to happen. So,
If I can just inject,
Sure.
I believe the solution is it's like all the above, legislation funding, but also academia and business cooperation. I was on a panel discussion, or I was at a panel discussion, and very reputable business leaders talked about, they're in the cyber community, and talked about what kept them up at night. And 3 out of 4 said local government. That's amazing. I mean, we're talking very, very large corporations. 3 out of 4 said local government because of the vulnerabilities and our dependence on 1 or 2 individuals, and we're not resourced. So it really does come down to a partnership on the legislation, which was done in some respect, but also the academia and business community to getting it right. We are very, very vulnerable, especially at this level. So. Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and those the advisors who are part of that conversation, I think are reading the room correctly. Mm-hmm. That we are, sadly, local governments are particularly situated as just great targets for folks who want to do us harm. So we've got to be smart about it, and this is not my area of expertise, but I know enough to know that the thinking about it doesn't start with just playing defense. Like, you want to have good systems and make sure that you're applying patches and that you have good leadership from folks like Mark Ripper in the county governments as your directors of IT to make sure, lots of people moving and working remotely has created its own extra vulnerability. Everybody using their own devices. It keeps people like Mark up night as well. So you take care of it on the front end, but you also need to have a good plan on the back end. So a combination of the state Department of IT, but also the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, treating these incidents in the kind of the same way as a tornado touchdown, mm-hmm. is the right mentality. When something happens, you mobilize across units, across governments, get everybody on it quickly. That we haven't always had that mentality. I think Maryland is moving in the right direction that way.
I mean, we're, after this, we're going to be listening, and I see the sheriff behind us, about body-worn cameras, mm-hmm. how to become proactive in situations, not just for, it's for both sides. It's not protecting those that they're, trying to de-escalate a situation, but also for them themselves. So with cybersecurity at the local level, what we have to address is how to be proactive at the lowest level, and that is very concerning. So just throwing it out there to
Sure.
think about, but okay.
So I will, if I may, Mr. President, I'll make a quick departure from things I plan to speak about, and let me give you about 90 seconds on body cameras from a Annapolis point of view, because there's unfinished business on Maryland policy regarding body cameras. The state has already said it's going to be law as of, I think it's the 1st of 2025. We want to have every officer in every agency equipped with a camera. And I think on balance, this is a good policy. You said it exactly right. This mutually serves accountability for officers, it protects the public. I think it protects the agency as well, mm-hmm. that when your officer has followed protocols and done the right thing, when you can demonstrate that reduces your liability for what becomes a claim or a lawsuit or whatever. So I think we're going to be in a better place once we have everybody with the cameras.
Yes.
That said, Maryland has laws on the books about open government, public documents, the Public Information Act. has basically been written decades ago around pieces of paper, sitting in manila folders. Someone comes to a desk, I want a copy, please, I'd like to see that public document. You run a copy, here's 3 pages, here you go. That's the way the Public Information Act is basically written, assuming that's how things work. 20 years ago, we had to rethink public information because a lot of the information is now a database. Oh, it's on a diskette or a thumb drive, and it has 65,000 entries. Okay, how do you share that, in what format, blah, blah, blah. The next tier is stored data from body cameras. That is itself effectively a document. Even if it's 8 hours of footage from each officer for each shift for the last 90 days, it's sitting on a server or in storage in some fashion. That is effectively a public document. And as the laws read right now, anyone can walk in the door and more or less say, I want it all. I want to see all of it. Well, on the hours of footage from a body camera, there are bound to be interviews with witnesses, children's, victims, confidential informants, all sorts of things where, I mean, sometimes governments get a bad reputation because folks like Tim have to magic marker out, sensitive detail on that sort of thing. That's what you have to do. You share a document, but you don't release the health records about an individual, so you redact. Doing that frame by frame on video is super costly and difficult. We need to thread the needle more wisely than we have yet on what do we owe the public to share with them for free. Public exposure of what's happening is fair, but the idea of, hey, I run a website and I want to put some prurient stuff on my website that people will get a kick out of, that is not the way public access information ought to work. So we need to get that right. We've got a little time before everybody has these cameras, but that's one component of what's ahead for Maryland on public records like that. So
I appreciate it. Thanks.
So with that, I'll speak to just a couple other things on fiscal issues writ large. I'll say one thing in particular that is a payoff for a lot of work by our local governments. I mean, we're in Annapolis all the time saying a variation on the theme, and that theme being we think local decision making is best for each community. That the commissioners here in Carroll probably have a better idea how to tailor a program in Carroll, and then the Garrett County commissioners may have a different idea of what they want to do there, and in Talbot County, the council have a different idea what they want to do there. We'd rather not have Annapolis say one size fits all, do it all this way. And we have some pushes and pulls and policy debates like that. That's all very fair. When it comes to tax policy, we have generally tried to say, when it comes to things like the local property tax, let that be the local decision makers. Don't mandate that we do things, make it a local option. If we want to do something for seniors or for veterans or for other classes of citizens, you can give a tax break as a local option rather than the state mandating it. This year, a good deal of debate showed up about what the state might be able to do with tax relief on the income tax side. And the standard variation of tax break on the income tax side is just a write-off. A subtraction modification is the term of art in the state. And so if you write off things on your state taxes, that has a carryover effect on every county. If this $1,000 is no longer taxable, not only is it not taxed by the state, it's not taxed by the county. Effectively, they've made your decision for you. For years, MACo has said, we think the fairer way to go is leave these things as a local option. And if the counties want to add on, if you've got an opportunity to do something temporarily or permanently, make it a local call. That's what they did this year. They wanted to move the needle. The governor was very interested in senior tax relief for retirees. And the state said, we want to give a $1,000 tax benefit. The way they decided to do it this year was as a $1,000 tax credit against your state taxes. So that leaves the county, it's up to you if you want to provide some relief for one class or another. If your budget affords that, we know you've got obligations with school funding that's driven by state mandates. You've got a variety of other needs at the local level. That should be your call. If you want to piggyback on top of those benefits, you can make that as a local decision. We think that's the right way to go. That is never going to be above the fold, A1, bold type. Like that's not sexy news out of Annapolis, but for county governments running your own, running your own budgets and making your own decisions, that's a really big deliverable. We could have been on the hook for hundreds of millions of dollars of just along for the ride tax cuts. Instead, you get to make that call, and I think that's the right way for that to go.
I just want to just jump on that and just say, I've been sitting on the Budget and Tax Committee for 6 years, and this is one that comes through submods. You know, it's every week there are 6 or 8 different subtraction modifications, and for the last half a dozen years we've been sending this letter, and it's like, is it ever going to pay off? Is it ever going to pay off? And it did. And when we had our last session, it was the night of our reception, and we did an in-person meeting for our last legislative committee meeting. And Senate President Ferguson came in, and he spoke to 3 things that he was really paying attention. One was the MS bill, one was the highway user revenues, and the other was state tax credits. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, and that's what happened. But that's what I'm saying. It's not the above the fold, like Michael said, but it is so huge for us. And that goes back to what I said about, you know, whether you're Republican or Democrat. Yeah, one side might think, I want all these, you know, tax relief and things like that, and the other side's like, no, tax more. That's where MACo comes in, and that the people that are sitting there and we're making that decision is, how does it affect our county? You know, we've got to fund the schools. We've got to fund public safety. We've all these other things to fund. And while I might personally think, yeah, I love tax relief, I know I've got to pay the bills, as do you. So I just wanted to put an exclamation point on what he just told you about that, because that is huge this year. And hopefully we'll carry that forward, you know, be a new crop of local electeds, a new crop of state delegates and senators, and we need to make sure that they still understand that next year.
So I'll speak to one more issue for a couple of minutes, because we moved in the right direction on a long-standing issue. This is highway user revenues, which is the share of state gas taxes and vehicle taxes that get sent back to local governments to maintain roads. This is a dozen years or so in the making. In the Great Recession in the summer of 2009, the state basically said, we've got a problem. It's only August of a new fiscal year, and we've already got a crisis. They grabbed almost all of our highway user revenues, and we've been limping our way back since then. The annual share of that money that comes to Carroll County, independent of your municipalities, about $2.7 million. And if we didn't pass a bill this year, we were going to fall off a cliff, and that was going to drop to under 2, probably $1.6 million, $1.8 million, or something in that neighborhood. So we needed to do something this year. We put in a bill to fully restore that county share and get back to where we ought to be. What we ended up with was a bill with a multiple year upswing. It's not a full restoration, but it moves us in the right direction. Pretty good thing. Sometimes you have to take half a loaf. I don't know exactly where you count this in fractions of loaves, but the 2.7 to Carroll is going to grow up to probably around 4.4 over the next 3 years. So the coming year will be about the same. We'll click up for 3 years in a row. Then we'll fall off a cliff again, but not even all the way back to where we are today. So we're moving in the right direction. This isn't a touchdown, but it's a solid, like, 15-yard pass, first down, keep moving, drive goes on, which I don't love. I would love to be spiking the football at this point, but we take what we can get. It took a lot of bipartisan help. It took a lot of participation by county officials. We had almost every jurisdiction participating in person and online at these public hearings and making the case. Those hearings could not have gone any better. And to be honest, the difference between the in-person hearing in the Senate and the virtual hearing in the House, I think, made the difference. Between the House felt like, well, we can give you a nickel on the dollar, and the Senate was like, we have to do better than that. We heard what they said.
You could feel the energy in the room. They moved us up to first. I know you were there, and again, over 20 jurisdictions, all the big county executives being there. Sitting there was just so powerful. You could feel that, and that is the difference between being in person and virtual. And I remember that, you know, the next day doing it again virtually in the House, and I was talking to some of the staff, and like, it was great. I'm like, oh no, it just felt different. So he's absolutely right.
Yeah,
so.
and I can tell you that I've never seen a bipartisan effort like that in my 8 years. You know, when I've got Brandon Scott and Johnny O sitting on this side, and Angela also Brooks sitting on this side, and Laura, you're on the other side. I mean, how could they not have said, we have to do something? That's the true meaning of making a difference down there. And that was a day that I was honored to be there. It was remarkable. So,
Well, we end every session.
despite the football, so but we appreciate what you did. I mean, what the efforts got us is.
Yep.
We'll take what we can get at this point.
That's where we are, and we've got a lot of folks to thank, and we still have work to be done. So that's okay to be in that spot. I'll mention one other issue pretty briefly, because I know it's on the docket for you and most of the county governing bodies. Police reform efforts from 2021. They had an opportunity to do a little nip and tuck on that bill this past session. It didn't go deep. It didn't solve some of the technical issues. We're left in an awfully quirky spot. I know you all have a proposal for the accountability board and charging committee to put those in place and get them up and running by July 1. Even without, in all candor, what was supposed to be the rules of the road set forth by state regulations. The game plan was state regs were going to be floated in, say, December or January, approved by about now, so we'd all know the details, and that hasn't happened for reasons that I think are understandable and reasonable. It's left counties in a tough spot. I can't give you a legal judgment on this, but my lay judgment is most of the counties are doing exactly what you are. Make a good faith effort to put these bodies together, establish what you can. We'll staff them up and we'll get the gears turning as soon as we possibly can. If the state gives us a wrench in the works on July 18th or something like that, if we have to nip and tuck our own thing, we'll do that. But I think everybody can live with the framework that the state has in mind for civilian-driven oversight of police conduct and some process that's going to act similar to the old Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights, but provide adjudication when there are claims against officers, both internal and external. So I don't want to get super deep into what's into that bill, but every county's going through what you are. We're not in an ideal circumstance. Appreciate you all making the best of a tough hand.
From my perspective, every jurisdiction, as we know, is very different. We have 8 municipalities. Most of them have law enforcement associated with them. Partnering with our sheriff and the MML and them, coming up with a solution to have in place, I think is a good thing to ensure that they are also a part of that solution, they being the jurisdictions. The biggest concern that I have is I want to ensure that we do not focus our attention on the diversity of the population, where we're actually out diversifying what really matters. So in other words, do not identify, I want this type and that type. No, let's bring them all forward. Let the Board of Commissioners make the decisions appropriately, like we do with every boarding commission. And then we, at that point, will have a good mix that represents Carroll County, as opposed to being so procedural on it's this one or that one. And at least that's my perspective, and I think we have that responsibility to do that. So,
all well said, I think. So with that, I'll close and say there's more stuff in the packet, and there's a great deal more that happened this legislative session. We did a little infographic for you about the breadth of different things that MACo gets involved in. I'll close with, we try and run a tally on success rate of the bills that we get involved in, and that is a genuinely misleading number. But I mean, 80% success. I don't like getting B minuses, but I will tell you that when MACo supports a bill in Annapolis, it has a good deal better chance to pass than a random bill. And when MACo comes to the table and either opposes or says this bill needs to be fixed in specific ways, the likelihood of that bill passing just over our objections and we get ignored is very remote. We come away out of each session with, at a max, 2 or 3 bills where we just couldn't get stuff done. For the most part, we come to the table, we work things out, we round off the we smooth off those rough edges, and we get things done in Annapolis. We want to be effective on your behalf because at its best, this is a partnership. A lot of things that the legislators care about are delivered at the local level, and so we bring that to the table. In addition to we support the bill, we oppose the bill, we're going to implement this bill, and let us walk you through what we need to do. So with that, if there's anything we didn't get to, happy to respond to your questions, but grateful for your time today.
I really appreciate the conferences as well, because I know the effort, well, no, I don't know. I can sympathize with the effort that goes into those conferences and your team and the legwork, both for the summer and winter conference. Having the ability to rally around the administration and have those discussions are so valuable. And it doesn't stop at the conference. It goes throughout the year. But we have accomplished so much because we get into the discussion with Secretary Ellington, or with HCD, or with obviously Secretary Slater now. No, he's gone.
Ports.
Yeah, it was Secretary Slater. But you get the gist, and continue those. I mean, it was challenging times in the last one because of COVID, but it didn't stop, and I really appreciate that because we got a lot out of that. So.
I like to say I've always been a big supporter of MACo, coming from a council position in the city of Westminster with the MML, then moving here. It's just you guys do so much for us, you really do. And then when you go to the conference, like Commissioner Russing just mentioned, all the networking we have, the people we can meet and talk to, take back phone numbers, go back and forth. But I also have to say, the last 2 years I've been on the legislative committee, even though I only got to go to Annapolis one time. But anyway, been on 2 years. So much more is done there. Your staff does tremendous work in preparing those bills and telling us what they're about and little synopsis and so forth. It's eye-opening. It really is, and I really appreciate everything that's done there for the benefit of the counties. And like what's already mentioned, it's not for the Democratic counties or the Republican. It's for the counties, and that means so much. And if people, I just wish more people could get a firsthand view of what happens, because so much happens. And like you said, MACo's a big mover down there, and I love the support with amendments. I love that because you have influence on a bill that we think is probably going to pass anyway. But let's try to move it a little bit to what we think will be much better. So thank you for everything you've done. And I'm at the end of my 8 years, but thank you. I really do appreciate it, and I mean it.
Thank you.
8 years ago, I was a little skeptical of MACo. Today, I'm sold. What happens and what you guys do throughout the year is great, but we go to a conference. We get more done in 3 days there than we do in 6 months here. And it's all due to MACo and what you put together. My sincere thanks to you for what you do.
You're welcome. And the rest of the year, it's like, we come in here, do these updates. Of course, I get to do this for 1 year. He does it every year. And we talk about all the policy and the bills and things like that. But what you just said about the networking and getting things done amongst ourselves, but MACo and their staff, that's what they do the rest of the year. And you talk about what did we get done legislatively. What I want to say is what they get done without legislation, through the conversations, through the relationships that they have with the senators and delegates before maybe something ever even gets introduced, or something goes away, doesn't even get through the whole bill hearing process because of the relationships. And that is what all of this is about, is networking. And I may think completely different than a Montgomery County friend of mine, but because we have a relationship, because we respect one another, we're going to listen to each other, and that's how we come to compromise. And that's what I was saying at the top of this presentation, is I wish that other levels of government would do that. And I think we've set a great example. So I'm glad you recognize all of that.
And we even listen to Steve and what he comes back with. He's done a great job for the last
sometimes.
8 years. But he needs to be appreciated for that.
I just want to say, we've known each other a long time.
Yes, sir.
When I was in uniform, and it's just, so I've changed roles from the installation. I mean, that was 2010, 2011, to economic development to this. And each part of it has a role to play with MACo. And that's what we got to continue to promote, is that it's not just the 24 leadership, but it's really all encompassing, because this, has a focus on our sheriff's department, on all the men and women in blue, dealing with all men and women in red, in establishing the right legislation. It's important that we really try to continue to embrace that. So, but again, kudos. But Steve?
It's already been said. Again, you guys know how I and we feel about the efforts that you make to ensure that all of us, from Garrett to Wooster, know what's going on, and we do that, and we know that, and it's because of you. So again, to your staff, make sure you send our thanks to them. With the reimbursement bill, I got a frantic call from a guy by the name of Kevin Canale at about 5 o'clock one evening, and said, "Steve, help here! You got to make a phone call." So we did, and the other thing that is remarkable to me is I've seen staff come and go at MACo over the last 8 years, and it never ceases to amaze me that you find folks that hit the ground running to replace those that left. And honestly, you do that. And I don't know where you find these people or what they're doing, but you do a tremendous job of just replacing, and off they go. And that's huge too, because you develop some relationships with some of the staff, and then they're moving on, but yet you remember them. You see them because they're in other roles, and they show up at events, and we like that too, to see them. But you replace, Dom is a perfect example. I mean, you would think Dom had been there for 12 years, and he's new. He's the new guy, along with the other folks that are there. So I just don't want to pick him out of the crowd, but all of them do a remarkable job. And Laura, to you, I've watched the presidents come and go. Wilbur was amazing. I mean, what do you say about Wilbur? He's, it's Wilbur. But to you, congratulations for a very successful year. You've done a remarkable job. I know it's not over yet, but you've done an amazing job. You're a great leader, and Talbot County's going to be sorry to see you go, because I know you've made a huge difference down there. So Godspeed to you, and whatever. I'm going to see you between now and when you go a couple times, but Godspeed to you in wherever life takes you to. So
and I think these friendships, they last forever. I mean, I know it's going to be like a big breakup in 6 months. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because I do. I love this organization, and I think the people that really get involved and understand what it's all about, and they just fall in love with it. And then the relationships and the friendships, are going to go on way beyond our term of office, and that's really, really special.
Yeah, I love to see those folks come back at the conferences. John Barr comes walking back in. Hey, Steve. It's just. Yeah. You're right. These relationships are remarkable. So thank you guys very much. So,
if I could do one quick reflective comment, I'm very grateful for the nice things said about the association and our work and events and so forth. But I'm a father of school-age kids, and I'm going to say the same thing to you that I say to my daughters, and that is, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. I can send you to a lovely school, but you need to engage and max out your time there. And that's going to take coaching and teaching and involvement and so forth. So, I mean, the leadership of MACo's affiliate structure is just completely littered with Carroll County leaders. I know we like to joke about Commissioner Wance, but in addition to being on our board, he also serves on a committee that guides the academy through the University of Maryland, that guides some of the most essential content for our conferences and events and so forth. Like, making sure we get good training opportunities for the next wave of elected leaders is an important duty of ours, and having folks who have been through it and see the value in it help guide what's coming next. We're going to have to replace him soon in that role. We appreciate the time and effort, but when you say you get a ton out of those 3 days at the summer conference, that's because you're maxing it out, and people keep coming back. All those secretaries need to be there because it's worth their time too. So it builds on itself, and I love nothing better than all of that coming together. So thank you all for the kind words.
Absolutely. Why don't we get together, get a happy snap, and you guys be on your way.
Don't forget the shameless plug about the summer conference now.
They're coming. Right back in. Okay. I'm usually a back row kind of guy.
Up front and center.
Mr. Burke? Right here. Not at Mr. Burke, right here.